All right, sweet. We are back. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time where Leah is. I'm in Toronto. Leah's in Los Angeles. For everyone joining, again, thank you for joining another weekly marketing webinar. We don't have a good name for it yet, but we will figure it out. I think we're on week 6 or week 7 right now. Again, for everyone that's new here, goal is to come with an expert on a topic tangential to influencer marketing every week, and then to ask a couple questions so that you don't have to spend a full 30 minutes or hour with us. It's just 20 minutes. And you walk away either feeling inspired or something that you can dig deeper into for a rabbit hole, or maybe something that you bring up at your marketing weekly meeting with your team that like allows you guys to think a little deeper. So I'm not going to waste any time. It doesn't matter who I am. I work for Hashtag Paid, but it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who the person is that's sitting either below me or somewhere on the screen. I don't want to do injustice to you, Leah. So why don't I give you the floor in like 30 seconds? Who are you? What do you do? And what? Don't worry about why you're here, but who are you and what do you do?
Intro. All right. I teach social media marketing and influencer marketing at UCLA Extension. I write a newsletter called ICYMI, in case you missed it, which is all around creator economy and social marketing. And then I also consult for a bunch of different brands. So that's kind of the speed version. But also, Danny, to tie back into what you were saying, today we're going to be talking about episodic content. And you said, oh, there's not really a name yet. If you're taking lessons on, from Hollywood episodic content, we want a recurring series name, and then some audio and graphics that people are going to be able to gravitate towards. People love familiarity. So it's like, yeah, let's make this a series that people recognize and they hear that, whether it's an audio cue, a jingle, they see those title graphics and they know what it is.
Hey, look at that. You're already tying the bow 2 minutes into the chat. That's crazy. That's someone with deep expertise. Let me ask you this. I think we're in an interesting time. And I think the reason I was really excited to talk to you today about the topic of the rise of episodic content, TV style series with creators on social and how that's going to impact influencer marketing in the future is because we're in a world of like algorithmically driven content. And so at that point, it doesn't matter about the series. It doesn't matter about the retention of like the total series. What matters is, can you hold the attention of the person on the screen right now for X number of seconds or minutes? But as you and I were talking a little earlier, we definitely have seen this rise. I've got examples. You've got examples. Before we kind of go anywhere, can you give everyone an idea of like what is the difference between, let's call it episodic content on social versus, let's use the term sporadic or like ad hoc content?
Yeah, and I think the sporadic I think of more as kind of like trending content. That's like, sure. Whether you're a creator or a social media manager, and I see those, can often be very interchangeable roles. That's when you wake up and you see girl dinner is trending. Or you see, I don't know, the Wes Anderson trend, like thinking about earlier this summer, the Wes Anderson trend is on TikTok and you jump on that. Super hard to predict or to plan for. It's just kind of, okay, this week, that's what we're all talking about. That's what we're all doing. Going to jump on that. I think episodic is thinking about pre-planned and produced episodes of content, kind of standalone episodes, but around a very specific theme or topic. I wouldn't say it's kind of it's not your daily content because it has to be really tied to something. Unless, one good example would be the guy that in New York that asks, what do you do for a living? What's his name? Ted Czar. I like wrote myself a note. Ted Czar, because I see him all the time. I just don't necessarily remember what his name is. He's got episodic content. I think a lot of creators and brands aren't going to have that kind of episodic content naturally every single day. But they might have that as kind of interwoven within the trending content that they do, kind of the one-off stuff, like the sporadic, like you said. Then they're also going to have these series, which are, maybe a twist or a very kind of specific deep dive into whatever their niche is.
And so with all that said, I guess the big question is like, why do you think we're seeing more creators? And then that translates into maybe more marketing teams, but specifically, why do you think we're seeing more creators get into series or get into an episodic mind versus the trend or the sporadic ad hoc content that we've seen dominate for the past 3 years?
Yeah, I think you touched on it already. Certainly the platforms are prioritizing it. I think TikTok is prioritizing entertainment-based content or kind of interest graph content versus looking for what your friends and family are doing. We're also seeing that in the Instagram feed. The feed is becoming more and more for brands and creators. DMs and stories is the place that you're going to find your friends and family. So I think the platforms are prioritizing. YouTube has always had playlists. TikTok recently brought out series that you can put behind a paywall. Instagram also now lets creators collect certain video, or aggregate video into series, and kind of format that. So there's a platform element to it that's being rewarded. I think for creators, there's kind of this idea that it's easier to plan and produce an episodic series than it is, like I said, to jump up every day, log online, see what people are talking about, see what the trending audio is, and certainly not ignoring that. I think you like a mix of kind of episodic series and trending. Trending certainly allows you to tap into certain things that are popping off and jump on board those coattails. But I think the episodic content just gives them more to plan for and kind of allows them to be a little bit more creative. It can also give them an opportunity to stand out based on a series. One of the ones that I'm thinking about in particular is Remy Bader. And I'm thinking about, she did these realistic hauls. That's kind of the name of I would say it's her version of Get Ready With Me or Outfit of the Day or Fit Check. She called them realistic hauls. Goes to stores, brings home a bunch of clothes, tries it on. And so I think it's like it was a way for her to set herself apart. There's nothing wrong with, you might have an episodic series that is Get Ready With Me or, Fit Check or whatever it is. But I think if you can kind of personalize it to that extra level, it becomes something that you're really known for. Thinking about like Keith Lee and the way that he does a lot of people do food reviews, restaurant reviews, but the way that he did it, the way that he sets up that kind of like the recurring visuals where you see him at home, the camera angle, kind of the jump cuts, that was something that he took and really was able to own. And then I think also against all of this, we're also seeing obviously the strike in Hollywood. And, just for context, like certainly support the writers, support the actors. I happen to love TV. I hope regular TV, terrestrial TV never goes away. I watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of streaming. I watch a lot of social, like no shame in that game. I'm into TV. At the same time, I think as eyeballs are shifting, I think creators can learn lessons from Hollywood, from more traditional TV. And we know, I don't know if you saw the data, it's been like the past couple of weeks, Americans are spending less time watching traditional TV versus streaming services and other platforms. So like the attention is shifting, the eyeballs are shifting. So I think it's going to be a place where a lot of people are watching, there's a lot of attention, but there's certainly lessons that we can take from the traditional episodic TV model.
So the question that then pops up into my mind is like, what is just so everyone has a really good understanding of, let's call it episodic and or higher produced TV based content on social. We talked about the pros. In your mind, what are the cons for a creator or for someone creating some type of, let's call it episodic content and or TV content that might play against, just so that the marketers in the room have like a pretty good idea on both sides of why they maybe should invest in creators doing episodic and maybe why they also shouldn't?
Yeah, and just to clarify, like you said, higher production value, it could be higher production value. Yeah. It doesn't need to be. Like, I don't think that's a requirement. I think the thing that's the number one requirement that is also probably one of the biggest cons is like the storytelling or entertainment value. You need to come up with a really good idea. And that's not easy. Like, if it were easy to create amazing episodic content, we'd all be doing it, right? I reached out to you once. You were doing this thing on Friday where it was like new music. I think it was like new creators or new music Friday or something. And I was like, this is a series in the making. Like, this is a really good idea. I don't see it everywhere, but like the way that you were doing it was just really great. So I think that that's both kind of the number one requirement of episodic is coming up with a good idea. And maybe one of the biggest cons is coming up with an idea that people actually want to watch. And I think that this is where brands and creators need to lean on each other. Creators are really good at understanding what audiences want to watch. Their entire brand, their company, their being, their, the business that they run is based on the audience that they grow. And so they have a unique insight and understanding into the content that people want to watch. Marketers have a very different kind of perspective or role, and that is selling the product or service that they represent. For them, it's not necessarily thinking about what is the most interesting thing to watch. And that's not to say there aren't creative marketers or, brands not doing an amazing job at coming up with episodic series. But I don't think it's like first and foremost the thing that marketers actually need to prioritize. And so I think one of the challenges is you don't want to produce a 10-minute infomercial. Like, if I'm a brand, that would be my biggest concern, is that essentially it just turns into a 10-minute product endorsement that really, nobody but you and the people on your team want to watch. So I think working with creators kind of helps you tap into a little bit more creativity, a little bit more insight and understanding into like the type of content that people want to watch. Doesn't mean that you should set aside, goals or kind of like, ideas of how you want the product integrated, for example, or the message that you're ultimately hoping to get across. But I think it's a very light touch product placement type of marketing versus, product endorsement.
And so if I'm a marketer today, if I'm a marketer in the audience listening,
yeah,
how do I take everything that you've noticed in terms of, I'm not going to call it the rise, but we're seeing like a strong tailwind of this episodic content, to your point, whether it's highly produced or it's a little bit more ad hoc to the face.
Yeah.
How do I take this and make decisions with it, or be a part of it, or make an impact with it for my brand as a marketer? Let's call it over the next year, 2-3 years. Like, where do you start?
Yeah. And, I think as I was thinking about our conversation, getting ready for it, I think I'm going to tweet out and put on LinkedIn a couple of links that things that I kind of research I did, or things that I read, or conversations I had over the year that kind of led me up to this, just as like extra resources for people. I would think about, one is finding a creator whose content you love, that you feel like that you can partner with. Two would be doing a deep dive with them, and really getting them, this is a collaborative process, getting them involved in your customer journey. So I think one of the things that you need to figure out is, because this is not, it's not an ad, and it's not product endorsement. It's, like I said, it's a little bit more of a soft touch kind of product placement. Thinking about your customer journey, thinking about where your customer is coming from before they get to your product, maybe where they are after your product. What is this product helping them do? And not looking at like, oh, I'm using this and now my life is better, but thinking about like, I don't know, if it's clothing, like where are they wearing that clothing? Where's that clothing taking them? I was talking to a swimsuit brand, and it was like, okay, are we doing maybe a series of like the best pools around Los Angeles or the best pools around the world? Because the swimwear is just, makes you feel so confident and kind of, is just so great to wear that you want to be out there. Like, where are you going with that swimwear? So I think it's thinking about that like as you're thinking about the idea, and then looking at, again, the lessons of traditional television. And I think it's, like I said, the idea, which you and probably the creator are going to have to come up with together, and coming up with entertainment value is going to be the most important thing. And then after that, it's a little bit, to take it back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's repetition. It's repetition around whether it's jingles or audio cues, like thinking about music and audio cues, bumps, for example, like little sounds, either intros, outros, somewhere in the middle. People love familiarity. So it's the same reason that you think about why people watch TV, whether it's scripted or unscripted. Scripted, we get cop, lawyer, doctor shows over and over. People like kind of formats they're comfortable with, or that kind of speak to a specific emotion. Laughing, crying, fear, whatever it is for scripted. And then for unscripted, you're thinking about, okay, what are the formats there? Like the cooking shows, the game shows, the talk shows. Like, is it learning? Is it discovery? Is it transformation? What are those elements to tap into? So talked about like jingles or audio, talked about a recurring cast. And so thinking about whether it's the same person that's going to show up, like the host of the show, like, hey, it's Danny. Every week we see Danny. It could even be, think about like Vogue's 73 questions. So Vogue's 73 questions, for anybody who hasn't watched it yet, is an episodic series that Vogue produces on YouTube. And it's a guy behind a camera. You never see who it is, but it's kind of that recurring, like the cameraman and your first person POV as you're going to visit a celebrity or whoever it is Vogue is talking to. Like, the person that we visit and the setting might change, but the camera person and that first person POV perspective remains the same. That's the recurring character of the series. And then schedule. So take a lesson from TV, take a lesson from, YouTube, and think of those YouTube. I think YouTube kind of grasped this very early on, where it's like an episode drops every Friday at 2 p.m. Think about like that kind of model that we've all come to expect. And that even though streaming tried to do away with it, the most popular series on streaming are now going back to, okay, we're releasing like an episode a week, or 2 episodes a week, or they'll release like the first half of the season, and then you'll have to wait to get the rest of it. So like, you're creating that predictability, consistency, but also kind of that anticipation of like, okay, I know that every, whether it's Friday, whether it's Monday at 7 a.m., especially if you're more of a kind of B2B series, it's like people are getting into work, they're checking social, and they want to see this like amazing series that's going to help them start their week and do a better job. So Monday, 7 a.m., we're dropping that series and we're keeping it. And, I remember like a long time ago, this was in the Smosh show, which is now kind of rebooted for YouTube. But I remember talking to I think it was their director of social a long time ago. And she was like, those guys killed themselves to like every Friday at, I can't remember, it was 2, 3, or 4 o'clock, like an episode would drop, and they, no matter what, would like make sure that that was consistent, because people came to expect it and people came to like wait for that series to drop so they could watch it. So I think it's really tapping into all of those things that people love, like the consistency, the predictability, the familiarity, along with the really great storytelling that kind of or entertainment value that touches an emotion that you're hoping to elicit.
What it sounds like, and it's so cool to hear you say this, it almost sounds like you're not working, what we're starting to see is marketers not working with creators purely because of their audience as like a megaphone, but it almost seems like marketers, the smarter marketers, are now working with creators to be a character in their world. And then to your point about repetition and familiarity, it almost feels as if there's the compounding effects on your return and dollars spent, because as it becomes more familiar, you don't have to sell. Like, you don't have to do a lot more work. To your point about the story is just baked in, and a good idea is a good idea. So it almost feels as if you're taking a long-term view as a marketer, then this is like really, really powerful. Is there any benefit in doing stuff in the short term if you're trying to work and be a part of an episodic so-called series on social?
No, I would say I would love to be able to think of an example, but I really can't, unless it's some huge spectacular, I'm thinking like, Mr. Beast style $100,000 production video that's like a one-off spectacular. But I think it's really hard to capture and retain eyeballs for something that's like a one-time only thing. I think the marketers that are going to get it and are going to jump on this are going to be the people that look for those, long-term repeating relationships with creators, who are used to working with somebody who understand the value of like the consistency, the predictability, and the familiarity of working with somebody who has the audience insights, who has the creativity, who becomes, a familiar face. So I think those are going to be the people that probably benefit from this the most, that already understand the value of having a recurring relationship with a creator. And I think those are probably going to be the people that get the most out of this and are best suited to kind of turn this from, oh, okay, we're going to turn this from like, you're just a conduit for advertising our product, to we are becoming more of an entertainment business. We are creating entertainment content. You are the face of it. You also bring the insights of understanding, possibly what our target audience and our overlapping audiences might want to see.
I like what you said, I think it was a couple minutes ago, and you said we're starting to see like a nod to the old style of working in TV and working in entertainment as a marketer with product placement. So it's almost like history repeats itself. And we've seen like the rise of so-called social and what influencers have done for people over the past 10 years. But now there's a ton of it. So how do you retain and how do you go long-term and how do you actually get a lot of value compared to so-called followers and metrics? Maybe this is the way. I know we're at 121. Leah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for dropping knowledge. Thank you for the examples. And thank you also for taking us almost like back into history. Like here's what was done, and now here's kind of how you can apply it today. I think that's super valuable for everyone here. For everyone that joined throughout the 20 minutes, thank you for joining us. We're here every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Pacific time. Next week, we're speaking to, I think, someone that's friends with you, Lindsay Calabrese, who's now at the Arena Group, and she oversees their creator network. And so that's going to be a fun conversation on how to work with creators, not just for influencer marketing, but behind the scenes and behind the camera to really boost your whole operation. But in the meantime, everyone have an amazing week. Leah, once again, thank you so much for joining. And to everyone, hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
See you soon.